with developers in Vietnam, where we have a great panel of speakers, including Frank, Yusri, and Singer to share with us today. This webinar is a collaboration with Startup Singapore Global Tech Talent Alliance in order to have Singapore companies gain access to the tech talent pool in Vietnam. My name is Jung, JDI Digital Marketing Manager, and I will be your host. Our webinar agenda for today is to hear from our three speakers, followed by a panel discussion and audience Q&A, where you can interact directly with the speaker. So please feel free to drop your question in the chat, but do take note to send it to the public channel and not directly to the speaker as they may miss it out. We will also be live streaming the webinar on our social media pages, but we will be stopping it just before the panel discussion and the Q&A, just to keep things a little bit more private. At the end of the webinar, we will also share an exclusive promotion for the attendees. So do stay tuned until the last moment. So without further ado, let us now kickstart the session with our first speaker, Frank Lee, who is the Managing Director and founder of JDI. Frank has over 15 years of experience in scaling business overseas. Since 2016, he has advised more than 200 companies on their tech recruitment strategy in Vietnam and has experience growing offshore tech team from 0 to 80. Frank's topic today is about effective remote tech team model in Vietnam. Please give him your warmest welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for attending today's call. Yeah, today my topic is going to be talking about the effective team structures for the remote tech team in Vietnam. I'm going to share my screen right now. Please tell me when you see my screen. All right, yeah, so about team structure for your tech team in Vietnam. But before that, I will talk a bit more about JDI itself. So JDI is a venture capitalist driving forward the future of innovation. Right, we have been in the tech startup space for more than 6 years now, and my previous life is also a VC in Singapore, investing into tech companies. So we have been helping a lot of companies, including fintech, F&B, and e-commerce, and edutech companies to grow, strengthen their tech teams in Vietnam itself as an offshore. Right. We have also diversified into 5 different kinds of businesses in Vietnam, between Singapore and Vietnam. First, we are in the talent piece. We do the recruitment, human resourcing, and internship in Vietnam to access the talent in Vietnam. We are also doing software development and freelancing and network access to help companies to grow their tech stack more. We also have a launch business whereby we bring companies to launch in the Vietnam market to access the market in Vietnam itself. We have capital arm, which looks at venture capital and investment into tech companies, as well as helping them to fundraise for their Series A, B, and C. We also have a venture arm whereby we help corporates to venture into innovative space, and we also venture build together with them. Some of our customers include venture builders, finance company, fintech company, e-commerce company, HR tech companies, as across. These are some of our companies that we work with. So back to the topic on the considerations for the Vietnam tech team structure. So if you want to be thinking about the tech team structure in Vietnam itself, there's 5 different different factors that you must think about. How do you engage them? Is it going to be outsourced, whereby you engage with a external agency over in Vietnam? Or do you go and access the freelance resources in Vietnam? Or basically have an agency whereby you can hire the developers and park them under this company as employer of record. The other area you need to think about is communication costs between the developers between the Singapore side and the Vietnam side, because we know that Vietnam salaries are about 40% to 50% of Singapore side, which is why Vietnam is very attractive for Singapore companies to go in. But we must also care about the communication cost between the Singapore team and the Vietnam team, because for every communication is between a Singapore employee as well and a Vietnam employee. So the costs are quite different, right? In terms of, we also can think of the different team types, whether you're going to structure it on the functional basis, product basis, or matrix basis, which we'll talk about later more. And the other two area is the remote, because with the advent of the COVID-19, there has been many companies working on remote basis, and they're getting more used to remote basis. So we have if we are going to have a full remote team in Vietnam, we have to think of the structure in place for that to happen. Last but not least, you need to think about the culture and the communications channels between the Singapore and the Vietnam team. Right. In terms of engagement model, there's three different types of engagement model we normally see in the market. One, the most basic is outsourcing. You find an external agency, you engage with them, you give them a project scope to do. So the agency takes care of development team on their side. But sometimes they may not provide the product-based resources, like the UX designer, like the product manager, like the business analyst, to help you to write your product use cases and user stories, right? So if they do not, then we still need to have that inside the company, inside your own team itself, right? Engaging external agency is suitable for MVP development, and suitable for supporting for your non-core development, and as well to sometimes to augment your team, because sometimes the agency may have specialized skill sets like data analytics, which you may not have. The other model is a freelance model, whereby you engage individuals to work with your team. So freelancers, they may be doing multiple projects at the same time. So because of that, you may need to watch out for delays to your deliverables. But of course, it is a very free and easy way of doing things. Good and bad. The bad thing is the timeline may drag. The good thing is that you can access them and utilize them pretty quickly, right? So if you are on this model itself, you need to have your own product manager to watch over, as well as a senior tech lead to watch over for the deliverables. This model is suitable if you are doing your MVP development, and if you are trying to augment your team. But of course, you must have the people to watch over them. The last model is when you're going on the bigger scale, you want to build an offshore team of not just 1, 2, or 3 persons. You want to build a 5-man, 10-man, 20, 50-man team, right? So in this aspect, you can either do yourself or engage vendors to help you build an offshore team. Right. This is to understand this model better. You need to know that this is an extension of your internal tech team. It is not an outsourced team. It is more of an internal team that is on the HR model, that you need to take care of them because they are your employees. Right. If you're going on this model, then you need to think about how the communication lines between your Singapore team and your Vietnam team are, and what is a suitable structure to match to your business. So some of the outsource structure that we see, I put it into 3 buckets. Basically, we talk to a lot of product owners from the business side. They want to do something to develop an MVP. So in that aspect, they will talk to the outsource provider through the tech PM, the product manager, tech project manager. In that case, you will need your own team of your product manager to watch over what needs to be developed, write the user stories and user specs. You may need a UI UX and the business analyst as well to help you craft more detailed specs for the outsource agency to do. But sometimes the UI UX and the business analyst, it may also come from the agency side. So in this case, it may still be outsourced, but in the minimum, you need to own the product, and you need to have a product manager to watch over the deliverables once the outsource is delivered. It can also go on the freelance model. If you're going on the freelance model, the model is very similar, except that you don't really have a project manager to watch over. So you need to provide your own project manager to watch over the developers. In some cases, you can also stretch to the other side where the UI UX and the business analyst can also be a freelancer. But in that case, you still need a product manager and your tech PM to watch after the deliverables. Right. The last model, we talk about the EOR, whereby you engage vendors. It really depends because there's many different structures behind here, which we will talk about later on. So before I go into more about how the communication, we need to understand that there's a cost difference over here. Now I've got some workings over here which I don't think we need to go through, but basically, like the Vietnam cost is about 40% to 50% of Singapore costs, right? Salaries, we know that we have gone up over the years. There's more demand than supply of developers. At the same time, even though the cost has gone up, the talent experience in Vietnam has also grown up significantly due to the global exposure. Right. So now I wanna change our mental model regarding about communication costs. Now, whenever there's a remote overseas team between the Singapore side and the Vietnam side, we need to know that there's communication is always between 2 parties or more. Right. So if let's say if you hire Vietnamese developers, right, how every interaction is there's a cost of communication. If you are talking about a Vietnamese to a Vietnamese communicating to each other, assuming the Vietnam is it's like a one head count cost over here, right? So so if any two Vietnamese are talking to each other, it's a 2 head count cost, 1+1, simple as that. But if let's say you have a tech lead over talking to a Vietnamese developer, the cost may be higher, 2.5, because the Vietnam lead costs a bit more. If you have a Singaporean involved in Singapore side to talk to the Vietnam side, it's about 3, because Singapore salary is about double of Vietnam. If you're talking about tech lead to a tech lead, Singapore tech lead to Vietnam tech lead, it's about 4.5. Same thing if you're talking about Singapore lead to a Singaporean developer, it's about 5. Right. So these are kind of communication costs, because when you talk about this, you're talking about structuring who should talk to each other in your whole structure. So on this atomic cost itself, looking at this structure whereby you have a Singapore tech lead and you're talking to your Singapore front end developer, Singapore backend developer, QA as well, and QC, and you're letting the individual in Singapore to communicate with the Vietnamese directly in this model itself. I did some calculation that based on that cost itself, you'll have about, in this whole structure, a 23 headcount basis to do that. Whereas there's a total communication cost of 56. But let's say if you replace this structure over here, instead of having 3 Singapore senior engineers over here, you replace it with a tech lead and 4 Vietnamese senior engineers. Right. In this case itself, the cost actually dropped down. Your headcount cost dropped down 23 to 20.5, and your communication dropped down significantly from 56 to 38.5, because essentially you're having the Vietnamese talking to each other more, and basically the instruction is passed down from the Singapore lead to the Vietnam lead for communication costs. The expensive part is if you've got a Singapore developer engineer to talk to the Vietnamese developers one by one directly. That's significantly heavy. But if you have the Vietnam tech lead to actually watch over and get the communication through him, then the communication is all within the Vietnamese tech team and it's much more efficient. So in summary, it is always important to get the Vietnam tech lead when you are going to build a team in Vietnam, which is actually what we see in the market. Most of our clients, when they go into Vietnam, they always want the tech lead to watch over the rest. All right. So if let's say team types, right, it also depends on let's say in the EOR structure, you want to build your own team. So it actually varies from your projected size. If you are building a 1 to 3 person team, well, it could be just directly front end, senior back end, and back end developers that you want to hire. In that case, the Singapore team will talk directly to them. So there is not that much savings, because remember the last slide, communication cost is over there. Sometimes so you may also have a Singapore lead to interact with all 3 of them. Yeah, this will lower your cost in the headcount, but communication cost is heavier on the Singapore lead side. If you grow a team to a 4 to 6 person, you may want to start off with a Vietnam lead as well at the first place, because then he will watch over the communication and management of all the different roles over here. It could be a senior front end with a front end. The Vietnam tech lead may be a senior back end himself to work with the back end. Then you may have a mobile person and the QA person to build as a base team. If you're going to 7-10 man team, then it will still be a Vietnam tech lead watching more resources on the front end, back end side. Or it can be upgraded to a tech PM, whereby he's watching over more hit counts on the senior back end, front end, etc. Right? If you're building a 10 to 50 person packs, it really depends on what's your requirement already. So it depends, and there are 3 possible team types for this. One is you group them by functions. So all the UI UX will keep the knowledge within themselves. Then you can also the front end people, front end team, the back end team, the mobile team, and the QA team. In this case, there's a lot of knowledge being interacted among themselves. But it may not be suitable if you're going on a product basis. So sometimes teams also go on a product basis instead. Instead of having group by functions, they go by product. So if let's say the VP of engineering watches over the user portal, so the user portal is a whole team of all the active roles required, the UI UX, front end, back end, mobile, and QA as one team. And the supplier portal team may be another team. And the support lead may be another team. So they work on the team basis, on the product basis. Right. So sometimes it may also be more efficient if you mix a bit of both in a matrix way. Like you have the UI UX team over there, but they are served different projects. So there's a lead who watches after all these and interact and share knowledge, but they're all serving different projects. So in a matrix structure, it is actually quite often the case. You have a matrix structure so that they can share knowledge, share experience on how to do things. Yet at the same time, provide support on the different product lines. Right. So yeah, then another consideration we need to think of is the remote management. With remote management, we are getting a lot of our teams are now on hybrid mode, 70% on hybrid mode. So we use a lot of Google Workspace, Slack, and other active communication, Jira, Confluence, etc., to make sure the communication lines are tight and efficient. Yeah, so we will see the importance of more and more of this. So if, let's say, any of the tech teams are not on this, I strongly encourage that because you want the flexibility if you're not already hybrid, right? Yeah, so hybrid is getting more common, but the traditional one is still the in-office, whereby all the Vietnam staff come to office. It is good in the sense that they are together, you can build up more of their communication and team spirit together. But of course, it comes at the cost of the office space and also comes at the cost of travel between each other. And most of the time, we see bigger teams needing this because with more people, the communication gets harder. So having in the same office, nothing beats drawing on the whiteboard for everybody, right, to communicate ideas. It could be hybrid as well. They could come to office 2 days a week or 1 day a week just to sync up before they go back to their development online. Then we are also seeing some companies going full remote. Everybody's working from home, not just the VN staff, but also the Singapore staff and other country staff. This will definitely reduce office costs and will allow you to have an expanded candidate pool because sometimes candidates, they just don't want to be in the city area. They want to be in the countryside. They want to be in a tier 2 city. That's where their family is. So if you are open to full remote, you have access to these candidate pools. But of course, you need to set up all these provisions and programs and structure to build your team culture and belonging. So I've seen some 100% global remote teams, and you can also work for smaller teams whereby there's not that much communication required together. I think my time is really up already. So I think the next two speakers is going to share more about culture and communication. I'll just take another 2 minutes more over here. Yeah, so culture and communication is very important as well. These are the soft side whereby where you build more trust among each other so that they can work with each other cleaner and better. So in terms of work-wise culture, there's a lot of community spirit over here. They lunch together in the office and they go karaoke together after office hours, etc. They do activities together. So participating in those is really good for you, right? And know that trust is time to build. It will take time for you to work with each other to understand each other more. Respect is important. Faith is important, and always be negotiable when be flexible with your staff, and your staff will be flexible. Right. Other things like community spirit, events together. Know that Vietnamese, they love their soccer, they love their food, and they are not Chinese as a whole. So it's a separate nation. Let's not get political over here, right? So yeah. Beer culture wise, yes, you would love to have the beer over here because it's cheap and they can drink a lot. Right. But high bio is 1, 2, 3, cheers. So you need to know that when you're in Vietnam. Drinking of coffee culture is also very strong. Bubble tea is also very popular. It's not healthy, but it's popular. And favorite pastime, I think, after office hour is karaoke and card games. Yeah, communication, yes. So I cannot further emphasize on communication. It's like basically there's 1 hour difference between Singapore and Vietnam itself, right? And because of COVID-19, there's little in-person meeting. So yes, use more of the communication tools that you have that we have in the market, like Slack, Trello, WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, practically on all of this. Yeah, and also try to follow up your online meetings with email communications to minimize the miscommunications because of English, right? Always be open to share more information, always be engaged, and everybody must be open to each other. So I believe this open culture, open communication will really help in making sure that the team feel like they are they are the same team. Yeah, some other success factors in the HR side, we talk about it. We need a strong local leader in Vietnam to lead the team, to motivate the team, and that's the communication bridge. And always know that the remote teams are not your outsourcing vendor. You don't just throw them like timeline and deliverables to do, right? There's always it's always about people. It's about finding out what's wrong, what's taking more time, and working with them for this. Localization, have a global plan, work together with them, understand local culture, but be flexible to adapt to local culture. And always have your performance review so that we know how their performance is. Because if you know how they perform, they also know that, oh, you are tracking their performance, and they will be properly rewarded and motivated working with you. Plan for their growth. If you don't, they will plan for themselves, right? By joining other companies. Yep. So that's all I have to share. I think I took some time already. That is all. Any questions we can ask later during the Q&A, or you can email me.
All
All
right.
right, Joe, I pass back to you.
All right, thank you, Frank, for the insightful sharing on the topic. I'm sure our audience has learned a lot about the different team structure to get tech done in Vietnam. If you have any question for Frank, feel free to type in the chat. We will monitor and make sure to present them to Frank during our panel discussion and Q&A. Let us now hear from our next speaker, Yusri, CTO of Preferred.